Hello and welcome everyone. Thank you for tuning in and watching this very first episode of Speaking Volumes, Books, Writing, and the World of Publishing. We are very excited today to have our first episode, have us be joined by these two amazing romance authors. We have Amelie Howard with us today and Jana McGregor. Thank you so much for being here, both of you. How is your morning going?
Thanks for having us on the first episode. This is really exciting. My morning's going pretty well. I don't know. How about you, Jana? How you doing?
My morning's going great.
Good.
So,
well, it's about to get even better, isn't it? We're going to talk about some romance books and just have a good time.
Excellent.
All right. So first of all, just to get started, would you like to both say just a few words about yourselves and what you write? Jana, would you like to start?
Sure. I write historical romance set in the Regency period. And what does the Regency period mean? You know, technically it's that period between 1811 and 1820 when the Prince Regent was the acting monarch in Great Britain. But a lot of people extend that all the way through to 1830 when he was actually the king. So my publisher is St. Martin's Press, and I have a series called The Caversham Heiresses that just finished up, and I'm starting a new one, and I'm releasing the same day as Amelie.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, so I'm Amelie Howard, and I write historical romance also in the Regency period as well as the Victorian era. And I also write young adult science fiction and fantasy as well. And my next book that's out is The Princess Stakes with Source Books. And then the sequel to that, it's not really a sequel, but sort of in the same series, is The Rules for Heiresses. And that comes out in October. And then I have another new series coming out with Forever that's based on rom-coms from the 90s. So the first one's sort of like a little pretty woman retelling. So I'm really excited about that.
I love that.
Fantastic. You're staying busy, Amelie. That's a lot coming up.
I'm trying. This
Yeah.
is the only thing we can do to keep ourselves busy is like just churning out the ideas, right?
Yeah.
And happy.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. Well, so today we are talking about, like I said, both of your forthcoming books coming out on June 29th. So shared book birthday, always fun. Jana's new book is called A Duke in Time, and as Amelie mentioned, her new book is The Princess Stakes. You guys don't have like cover prints or anything, do you? Of course, I only had the.
Ew.
Oh,
It's so beautiful.
Ooh.
so beautiful. I just
Yeah.
love that. Like,
I'm very excited about it. Yeah.
yeah.
That's mine.
And then this is mine.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Gorgeous.
Thank you.
So,
Yep.
all right. So yeah, and of course, just before we get started, like I said, these books both come out on June 29th. If you enjoy this event, you can find out more about these books by visiting bookshop.org, as well as discover local bookstores in your area at indiebound.org. But let's go ahead and we'll dive right in. We'll get this, this conversation going. So this is a question for both of you. These books, they are obviously set in the past. It is not a time period that, you were alive in. So how much research do you usually put into these books when you're doing them? And is your research kind of, mostly focused on, making sure that the book is realistic, that it's historically accurate? What's kind of your main objective when you do your research for these books?
So for me, I love historical romance books. So I think there's a difference between historical romance and historical fiction, right? Historical romance, I think, has a little bit more of creative license in terms of what we write about. But I like, as a writer, I like to be, just have some historical details so that there's authenticity to the world, whether that's in dress. And I mean, most historical romance authors do this, but, I use etymology.com a lot because, you don't want to have something that doesn't exist. Like you're talking about plastic in the Regency, like what, or something like that. So I tend to do a lot of research with the Princess Stakes in particular because it was written during the British Raj, which, as you know, is a difficult time in history. But I wanted to have all those details correct in terms of people who would be surrounding my hero and my heroine, maybe some idea of setting as well. So I do a lot of research. Whether it shows up in the book is another story, but I think that gives you as a writer just, sort of immersion into the world. So that translates to the reader, I hope.
Yeah. Jenna?
Well, I guess let me just answer it this way. When I get an idea for a series, it's normally always law related. I have a ton of law research books that I use primarily for property, marriage, and what else was there? Property, marriage. Oh, and then divorce. And it's all set from that time, because here in the United States, the majority of our law is, common law, which came from Britain and all of that kind of stuff. And so that's where my ideas come from. So if I've got that framework, then as I write the stories, I can pretty much, I research pretty much all the way through the book as I'm writing it to do that. And Amelie brought up an excellent point. So many people don't check through the OED exactly when their words were created. And readers are smart, and they get it, and they'll nail you for that if you don't do it. So
yeah. Well, that's an interesting kind of perspective, Jenna, that you said, you kind of focus on the law, and that I feel like that kind of, really shows in A Duke in Time, because, of course, you're dealing with this main character who finds out that her husband married 2 other women, and they're all in a rather interesting position. So, what was your inspiration for having this particular situation? Are there any, actual documentations of this happening back in the Regency era?
Yeah. That opening scene has been with me for like 3 years, and it wouldn't leave me alone. And the problem with it is that the man that these 3 women are married to, he's a duke's second son, and those folks were pretty much like the Kardashians of that period, meaning everybody knew who they were. I mean, whether it was a baker, a bricklayer, whoever, they knew that family. And so I had to come up with an idea of how could I get them married, and still no one really knows about it. So I picked a merchant, 2 merchants to be my 2 of the wives, and then the other one is a member of the aristocracy, but she's been living way up in the north and kind of isolated. So that was the way that I got off with that. But what was your second question? I'm sorry, I forgot. Oh yeah. No. You had asked me about if it had actually happened. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. From about 1750 to like 1815, I think there were close to 180 cases of bigamy, and they would always be tried like, in the Old Bailey. And if they were convicted, they either got branded on their thumb, or they were sent to prison, or they were sent to Australia. They were transported.
Oh, all right. Well,
no, I know.
Yeah, I kind of read that, and it was one of those things that I read, and I was like that didn't really happen back then, did it? But it's one of those.
It did. Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that it didn't happen.
Yeah.
And then Amelie, your book, kind of segueing into that. So your book is about a daughter of the Maharaja in Johor, and her father is killed, and so she has to flee, and then she finds herself on this boat with an ex-lover, I suppose we'll say, which just sounds like the worst case scenario for the characters, best case scenario for a romance book. How is it kind of, well, first of all, how is it writing what in my mind seems kind of like a lover's to enemies and then back to lovers sort of dynamic, as opposed to, just like an enemies to lovers sort of
Right.
journey.
They weren't actually like lovers in terms of like the biblical sense, but
Right.
I think they liked each other. And I think, back in those days, the father usually had sort of control over what his daughters did, right? Women really didn't have much rights in terms of like who they were to marry. They were brought up to be like basically bargaining pieces. And because she was a princess, his decision on who she had to marry was kind of like, that's her duty. So I think her father decided that this boy wasn't the right person for her, and she did what she thought, without giving away too many spoilers, like she did what she thought she had to do. So she left him, and then ends up on his ship, and he is a duke. So now he has this title that her father basically said he didn't have before, because he was like, a fourth son, or I think he was a fourth son. Yeah. Look at me. I can't remember my own characters. But the forced proximity thing is really cool, because, you have to talk and you have to face this baggage that you had when you were children, or, teenage lovers, as you called it, and sort of deal with whatever trauma they had inflicted upon each other. And he has a lot of baggage, because, she kind of dumped him.
Yeah.
And then, the just one cabin, which is kind of like my little twist on the just one bed trope. So that was fun to write. It was really fun to write. In terms of like, just the power differentials, she's a princess. He is now a duke. And although she's a woman of color, like I think like it was important for me to say that, she kind of outranks him, because we definitely didn't want those balances of power to be so unequal that you wouldn't see them together, and question it. You know what I mean? Where there's like is he a duke that's like kind of coercing this woman who doesn't have a rank or, the same level as him into a relationship, and it's not that at all.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. How, from like just a writing standpoint, how was it to kind of write, a decent chunk of this book in such a limited setting? Like, you don't have the ability to kind of, oh, and then they went to the market, and then they went to the park.
Right.
That to like, stay in one place, but make it interesting.
I mean, the ship ride from Bombay at the time to England is pretty long. So, I had them stopping in St. Helena, which I think was a port. And, so, I mean, I had like different times on the ship, the work that she was doing on the ship with other people. They weren't just limited to the cabin. She's a pretty independent person as well. So she, put on whatever she wanted to wear, which wasn't gowns, and she did work, and he wanted to punish her. So there's a lot of like little intrigues going on between them, and she obviously needs his help to get away, so she's going to agree to do whatever he says, and he's pissed off. So he's like, well, you tricked one of my men from not being on my ship, so you're going to do the work of this guy. And she's like, what? But she does it, right? So I mean, to answer your question, like I did talk about like different I think times on the ship, like days, afternoons, mornings, what they ate, what they drank, stuff like that, just, and to add to what you had asked before about historical details, I think, you do a lot of research into shipping in those times, and like what food would be like, which is really, it's not great, right? What rations would be like, because you're feeding a whole bunch of people. And also if your ship like kind of goes off track because of a storm or something, you have to take that into account to feed all the men on board. And then the fact that she's a woman with her lady's maid on a ship full of dudes, it's like,
Yeah.
but Sarani, my heroine, has very special skills, and she can certainly take care of herself.
Yes, I did get to one of those scenes, or have gotten there, I suppose I should say, in my reading. And yeah, that was definitely like you don't mess.
Mm-hmm. Nobody messes with her.
Nope.
Hidden blades in her skirts.
Yes, which that's my kind of woman. Blades in her skirts. So, and then we'll go back to Jana. So like I said, you have this situation where this woman finds out that her husband is married to other women, and he was, Duke's second son. So they're all kind of in a terrible situation, but they're hoping they have this, this savior. And I also loved that, Catherine, she kind of like she has her own shop. She's fairly independent. Um, and she could use some help, but she still kind of stands on her own. What and I guess again, this is another thing, just historically speaking, I don't have much education on. How common was it for women to have started something like their own shop and kind of have that independence?
Well, it basically everything comes down to economics. If they had the startup funds, sure, they could have businesses, and there were a lot of women that had businesses back then. The famous Madame Tussauds wax museum. Started. I think that was actually in the Victorian era, but it was close enough. And all the dressmakers, the majority of those were women. So yeah, it wasn't that common. But did I find somebody that made linens that was a female? No, but I found somebody that made linens and got their feathers from Sweden, and so it just made sense to make Catherine that person. So
Yeah, well, and good for her because again,
yeah.
well, I'll use this to segue into knives and skirts and women owning their own businesses.
Yes.
There's there's I think it's becoming less and less of an issue or a barrier. I don't know what you want to call it. But people still having this idea of romance as being, the bodice rippers, the Harlequin, Fabio on the cover kind of things. But I always try to look at people. I'm like, no, like romance is feminist. So what would you kind of say to those people that, what's kind of your argument or the way that you kind of explain, no, yeah, it's romance and maybe there's still these characters that are being swept off their feet, but they are still feminist. How do you kind of, set them straight? Janet, if you want to start.
Well, I will tell you that I was on a program a couple of years ago, and in Kansas City, and the host was a male, and he asked me, how can you compare the romance genre to, let's say, Ernest Hemingway and, For Whom the Bell Tolls? And I was like, are you kidding me? And so, I mean, I didn't let him go. I said, if you just take a look at Jane Austen, I mean, I think pretty much from the time that Jane Austen was published, there's maybe like a couple of years where she wasn't, her books weren't in publication. She's outsold Ernest Hemingway, by a gazillion, and she still does to this day. Why does she do that? Because it's great romance. But more importantly, I think I take away from romances, not only is there a lovely relationship that's built between the couples, and we get that happily ever after, but more importantly, I mean, I think it teaches us life lessons like empathy, community. What is our community? Who are these people that we fall back on all the time? And, in many ways, some of these things, like with Amelie's book, it's about growing up. Here we have this young couple that they were, young lovers, but not in the biblical sense. And they've gone through all these life experiences. And so they come out on the other side. And so, could they have been in that relationship, with their younger selves at that age? No, of course not. They had to go through all those struggles in order to be able to do that. And isn't that what our life's all about, is learning how to take, life's disappointments or struggles and turn them into something powerful. That's what gives us the ability to have a strong foundation in family and love, I think. So, all right, I'm off my soapbox. Sorry.
Oh, that was
I like your soapbox.
Amelie?
Yeah, I mean, I think people get what they want from books. And for me, like reading books my whole life, you take what you want from it, you read it through your own lens. Whether you're reading something that's considered literary fiction or reading a romance book, you're going to get what you need out of that book. I think that's the beauty of romance. In terms of feminism, like, I mean, women have been subverting the rules since the dawn of time, right? And I think us writing, you know, feminist, resilient heroines in our novels really just to show that, you know, that agency, right? That women can go after what they want, that even, you know, what I particularly like about writing in this historical period is that even with those rules of a father, say, determining your future, or a husband determining your future, or all these rules about how a woman could conduct herself or own, you know, not be able to own property or anything like that, usually, how do they bend those rules? And I love being able to play with that, because I think, like, you know, as modern readers, even in our own lives, we want to be able to, like, move forward. We want to be able to live and do things for ourselves and take chances and, you know, all that stuff. And I think if we see it in the books, right, it's kind of like this, it's not like giving ourselves permission, but we see it and we're like, yeah, we root for these heroines. And I think that's really important. So my heroines are always, like, you know, pushing the limits. You know, I wouldn't say that they're, like, you know, completely, like, you know, domineering about what they're doing. They're still vulnerable as well. But that's part of strength, I think, too, you know, that being vulnerable, especially to a hero that, you know, might come in and want to save the day. And then the heroine says, I can save the day myself, but thanks for your help.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. So.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you're absolutely right as far as, you know, and you know, speaking kind of specifically of, you know, the romance genre, obviously there is that romance element, but, you know, there's other things going on in these characters' lives, other things that they're striving for and working for. And I think to, illustrate that, hey, yeah, it's okay to go after what you want and still be vulnerable, both in
Yes.
romantic relationships, but also just in your life in general it's very important to, you know,
Mm-hmm.
have.
And the beauty of books is that even if you're, you know, say a shy person or a person that, you know, has different traits to a character that you're reading, you can still insert yourself into that book and imagine how, you know, an outcome might realize itself. You know what I mean? It's like books are a safe space for anyone to explore and escape.
Yeah, definitely. Good answers.
Well, and particularly this last year, you know, when
For
we've been
sure.
so locked away. I mean, I can't tell you how many of my favorite romances that I've gone back to reread just because I needed that comfort.
Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. Same.
definitely. Um, and kind of so Jana, coming to you next. Speaking of, in romance books, obviously the romance is a big deal, but there's usually other things going on in these characters' lives, other things they are
Hmm.
working towards. So Christian, your hero in the romance, he's a soldier. He's come back from war, and he has this mission to try and provide for his fellow soldiers. You know, after they come back, and they usually come back to nothing. Was there again? I just want to know what's real, basically. Was there any kind of program? Did anyone, whether it was the country or just an individual, did anyone try and do something similar to what Christian is doing in this book? Did anyone try to help these soldiers, or did everyone just kind of have to fend for themselves when they got back?
Yeah, I mean, it was basically, there were good Samaritans, there were folks that had charities, but they weren't, set up on a national level. And so if you look at that, the majority of the people that served in the war during that time came back and they were not given any pension. There was no final payment, etc. If you were an officer, a commissioned officer, you could sell that commission and they were worth something. So you could get your money back from that. If you kept your commission and retired, then you were considered half pay. But, they could always call you back whenever they wanted to. So what happened is, and if you look at this, in that whole entire period, of the Peninsula Wars and Napoleon trying to gain dominance over Europe, I think Great Britain was like, it was never, I don't think, I know that Napoleon never invaded it. But if you take a look at where all the fighting was going on, you know, in Spain and Portugal and France and Italy, I mean, those towns were just decimated. And so in many ways, I think the soldiers from Great Britain came back to more economic opportunities than the folks that were left behind, just from the standpoint that, you know, their infrastructure, their buildings, everything was there. But, you know, as I said in the book, you know, so many times their families, their wives, their fiancés, they were gone because they didn't know when these guys were going to come back. And if you think about it, you know, if your husband was fighting, you might get 1 or 2 letters a year. That's it. You never knew, you know, what the status would be. And so many of those folks would come back with disabilities, for war injuries, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And they would just, you know, literally end up begging on the street or sleeping on the street until they died. So, yeah.
Yeah, I read, I did, like, I think, I can't remember what book it was. It might have been My Helly and My Heart, where the guy was an in the war, an ex-soldier in the war, and he had PTSD. And I did a lot of research into PTSD, and it was called nostalgia back then because they thought the soldiers were like nostalgic for home. And you know, Jana's right. They're like, there was, I mean, no facilities. They were just left on their own, and it's sad, super sad.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think they actually had pensions set up until now. I could be completely wrong on this, but I think it was in like close to World War One. You know, everybody was just kind of, you know, if you made it home, you can,
Yeah.
you can find a job.
Yeah.
It's like every parent tells their 16-year-old, go find a job.
Right. Yeah. Was there any sort of like real world inspiration for this particular, you know, kind of subplot? Because, you know, there are still veterans today that just, you know, kind of aren't getting the help that they need. Was that any kind of, you know, did that feed anything?
Yeah. My son was actually an intern. I think it was at some department of HUD, and they were doing this was after he graduated from college, and they were doing a special project with the Veterans Administration. And so what they did is that they would go to the homeless encampments in the various cities, and they were trying to get a census of how many of the homeless folks were veterans. And I thought, oh my gosh, that would be great, you know, idea to do that. And I mean, it was really sad numbers. There were so many of them that are homeless here in the States, and I mean, that should never happen. And so that's where I got the idea from it, or for it.
Yeah, I always appreciate, well, and you know, sometimes I'm reading and I will do that. I kind of, you know, read what's going on in the book, and then I think about something in the real world, and you know, in my head I'm like, oh, they probably, you know, it's that life imitating art, and you're like, yeah, that's definitely what they were thinking. And I feel like sometimes it happens even when you don't mean for it to. It's just, you know, there's those similarities. So all right, let's see, Amelie, going back to you. So we already kind of talked about, you know, writing on a ship and everything like that. But I'm curious to hear your take. You know, life on the high seas and pirates and ship journeys, we seem to kind of romanticize them. What do you think is kind of the reason that is, you know, that we're just so enamored of, oh yes, you know, being a pirate on the high seas and finding treasure. What about that is just so appealing?
I don't know. Maybe it's always like that bad boy trope, I guess, you know, where you have like the guy or the gunslinger is like in the Westerns. And I mean, you know, the pirates that really has a good heart and is waiting for the right person to send him along the path to redemption. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think, you know, I was inspired by Joanna Lindsey. Like, she's just such an incredible writer of like all those ship books. Like, she has just a fantastic, the Mallory Anderson series is just phenomenal. And, you know, like I grew up in the Caribbean on an island and on boats my whole life pretty much. So I kind of wanted to just, write about being on the ocean, and it was fun. It was fun. Like, I mean, that was probably like a third of the book, and then it goes into, once they get to London. So it starts in India, it goes on the boat during that voyage, and then it goes into when they arrive in London, and they have to fake an engagement so that Ristan's mother will get off his back and not try to match him up with like 9 million ladies.
Yeah, mothers.
I know.
Worse.
Yeah. I mean, but in terms of the fascination, I think we always love the bad boy trope, and sort of, how do we kind of make these guys realize that their naughty ways, their wicked ways are better served elsewhere.
Yeah, definitely. Yep. I've been wanting to watch Pirates of the Caribbean again, so maybe I'll have to do that now.
Oh yeah, I mean, Orlando Bloom, come on. Also Jack Sparrow, yeah.
Well, and speaking, so yes, like you said, they're on this journey to London, and they're going from India to London. Sarani is a woman of color. Talk a bit about what life was kind of like for people of color in England, because I think that's another one of those things where you obviously look at the majority of history and things like that, and people of color aren't really mentioned, and then I think sometimes certain readers will be like, oh, that's not realistic that there's a person of color here, but it's like, no, just because you never saw it in history or were taught about it doesn't mean they weren't there. So can you talk a bit about what their kind of experience was?
So think about what where history sort of came from, and that white male gaze, right? That's where most of the accounts are going to be, that the historical accounts came from. But people of color have been in, the British court for a long time. They just haven't been written about. I mean, I did a lot of research, particularly because I wanted, like I said earlier when we started this chat, about having, just those historical elements that give authenticity to, the story. I researched a lot on the Rani of Jhansi. She was a queen, a warrior queen who fought against the British Raj during the period in India. But I also did research into Sophia Duleep Singh, who came a little later, but she was a princess who was Victoria's goddaughter. And, she lived in the courts, and she outranked a lot of the nobles. And, she still encountered racism in the court because people judged her on the color of her skin. And she went on to be quite a famous suffragette fighting for women's rights. And, it was just very interesting reading about her because she was a remarkable, remarkable woman. And so I kind of modeled my heroine after her because I was just, she's impressive, but at the same time, you have to write. I feel like you have to, and I saw an article by the Duchess of Sussex. So she said, we have to talk about the uncomfortable things, have the uncomfortable discussion to move forward. And I feel like if I didn't touch on some of the aspects of racism that a person of color, a woman of color, might have endured in the, Victorian era, I would have been a little remiss of me. So there is stuff that my heroine endures, but I address it on the page, right? I'm a woman of color. I've endured, encountered some racism, and I wanted it to be like authentic. And yeah, a lot of it is a balance, right? Because you want to balance these historical details with the romance, right? You don't want it to take away from the budding relationship between the hero and the heroine, but at the same time, you want it to be real. So I think it's a challenge for every single author, whatever story they're telling, to bring it to the page in a way that feels right to them, right? So if we're talking about writing about people of color, we want more stories out in the world, right? Because I'm only one person. I grew up in the Caribbean. My background is completely different to somebody who might have been born here or been born in England or India or anywhere else in the world, right? So I can only tell the story from my own experience, which is an ex-British sugar colony, right? That's where I was born and spent most of my life. But yeah, more stories, more diverse stories. We need more of them.
Yes, absolutely. All right. Now, okay, that was a serious topic. That was going to be discussed, but we're going to lighten it up a little bit. Jenna, I have a very specific question for you. I think I know the one I'm talking about.
Yeah.
so there's a scene early on where it's like Mary's, prize stallion, because it's a mare. There we go. She's kind of suddenly delivered to the Duke's residence, and then he proceeds to kind of calm her down because she's a little high strung. And I was sitting there reading that, and I just kind of got to the end of the scene, and I was like, I don't think I have ever read a more like, just like, like watching this guy just gently kind of subdue this horse and take care of her. I was like, this is the sexiest thing I think I've ever read. Was that your intent in writing that scene, or am I just weird?
No. I mean, I don't know. Let me just set it up a little bit. Throughout the book, Christian's brother, the trigamist is what I call him, the guy that married the three women, he keeps on sending bequests to Christian, completely forgetting the wives. Everything's being sent to his older half brother, and the very first thing that Christian receives is his racehorse. And as the horse handler is trying to talk to the butler about it, the horse walks her way into the ducal residence. And Christian and Catherine have been kind of going back and forth, not necessarily fighting, but they're not too enamored with each other. And so I wanted to, this was the purpose of the scene, was to let Catherine see Christian's sweet side, that he's not always this war hero Duke, that he really has a caring part to him. And so that's why he settles the horse down. But of course, they're going to be together, so she's got to think it's sexy. And besides that, my mother always told me, you can tell whether you really want to be with a guy or not by how he treats his dog. So that was it. I write a lot of animals in my stories.
Well, your mother and I agree on that. I think that's a very, and I think, just extend that to people in general. I mean, if, however they treat animals is a good indication of how they're going to treat,
Yeah.
people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
And I think, and that gets back to the empathy thing that I was talking about before. I think romance novels, I think romance writers do a wonderful job with that, so that we can all fall in love with that couple as they do on the page.
Yes. And then speaking of scenes that I really enjoyed, Amelie, I particularly enjoyed your bathtub scene.
Ooh, I love bathtub scenes.
And it was, I think I tweeted at you about it or something. But when I was reading that scene, and and you were setting it up, like, and she like opened the door and she turned around and like what did she see? And I was like, oh, like he's gonna be in there like half naked or something. And then you described the bath, and I'm like, oh.
She's super dirty. She's on a ship. She's been like literally cleaning herself with like rags and water in a dish. Yeah, it's gonna be the most seductive thing she's ever seen, is like a nice hot like tub.
Yeah, it was great. It was just a really great little, like just like, oh, mislead.
Yeah, it's not a dude. It's the bath.
It's a bath.
I would love that. Like if I came in from like, working outside and somebody drew me a bath, I'd be like, I'm gonna marry that person.
Yeah.
After I marry the bath.
Yeah. Bath first, then we can get married.
Right.
Yeah.
That was a fun scene to write, because any scene for me with water and stuff like that is sexy. So yeah, it was super fun. And then of course this is the first time that she's seeing him since she saw him as a boy. So boy to man sort of, it's a big change.
Yeah, there have been noticing them. Yes, yeah, that was a fun scene. Yeah. I'm distracted by bathtub scenes.
I know, right? I was like, so
next. I don't know. Well, so both of these books, well, Jana, I know that yours is this is the first in kind of a new series you're starting, and it's called the Widow Rules. I have it written down.
Right.
Yes, the Widow Rules. Which I think, well, first I'm kind of guessing that we're going to see more of Constance and Beth in the next books.
Yes, and those are the other two wives.
So
So yes, we
yeah.
will see. Beth's or Constance's book comes next, and it's she's with Jonathan, the the Earl that came back with a shattered leg, and then Beth and Grayson.
All right. Yeah, I'm very excited. And I find it like again, just kind of, romance, maybe taking certain people by surprise. But I liked that it was kind of focused on, widows. It wasn't just, like young ladies in the Regency. It's like, no, this is stories about women who have gone through something that, yeah, threatened to really ruin their reputation and set them back, but we're gonna see them overcome. So I thought that was a really, was there a particular thing that made you want to write and focus on widows in Regency era, or?
Well, I mean, I had to kill him off, so yeah, I mean, it was just kind of like it was forced to, because otherwise I wouldn't have a romance because they,
Yeah, yeah, he needed to be out of the picture.
he needed to be out of the picture, so they were all widows, and and the and also I think it's more fun to write about widows because they do have life experiences, they do have sexual experiences, so it's much easier for them to know what they want as it relates to a perfect partner.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I didn't think about it that way, but that's a good point. Kind of a
Yeah.
little older and wiser, and yeah. Um, and
They,
then
they know their business. That's what she said.
that's what you're really trying to say.
I
Yes.
mean, romance is escapism, right? So it's like, we're writing especially about these young debutantes, and it's like they have no experience. And then I think back to like kind of my first experience, and I'm like, wait, what? This sounds really good. Why does this sound so good in this book? That's not how it was. Someone lied to me. But I feel like romance has something for everyone, and I love that you're writing about widows because I think that's so cool. Like second chance stuff is also something I love to read. One of my favorite tropes. I love second chance romance.
Thank you.
And then Amelie, so you said that Princess Stakes, is that going to be first in kind of a loosely like collected sort of series, not necessarily,
Yeah, I mean, how historical romance is. It's really just like who is the next character in the book that gets an happy ever after.
yeah.
And so yeah, so there's two books right now. The first one's Princess Stakes, that's June, and then Rules for Heiresses is the sister of the hero in book one, and it's her story. So it's Ravenna's story, and she is a very interesting piece of work. There's more ships in that one. She runs away on a ship to the West Indies, which is, where I grew up, and finds also like a childhood friend, like a childhood neighbor that was supposed to be dead. And he is like the grandson of a duke. And he is, his mother was a French Creole woman, so he's mixed heritage. And it's just really interesting, like the relationship between the two of them, because she's also a very independent thinker, doesn't want to be strapped down by convention, and then realizes that she has to follow those rules because she won't have an income, she won't have money, she'll be ostracized from the town. I mean, she has to kind of forge a path forward that works with who she is, not ruining the reputations of her mother, her brother the duke, and then also the hero's sisters who are unmarried. So there's a lot of responsibility. You might want this like independence, but at the same time, if you get that, you risk hurting people who mean something to you. So, I really loved writing her story as well. And that cover, I'll find it because it's so beautiful.
It is. It is gorgeous.
Thank you. Yeah, I love it. It's one of my favorites. Oh, here it is. Gosh, it's so gorgeous. That's it.
Isn't that? Oh, I love it, love it, love it. Look at
Yeah.
that.
He is so fine.
Put that up, next to your bed and be like, oh,
I know, right? I'm like, oh, you're so pretty. Yeah.
Again, now I'm distracted by hot dudes. What was I going to
I
say?
know, right?
This is the worst thing about
They
romance.
blanket your brain.
I know, you just get distracted by, dudes and ships. What was I going to ask? Yeah, it's gone forever. Well,
And and his ship is not like a ship that they took from India to England. That
mhm,
was like a packet ship, like
yeah,
with some steam capabilities. But this one's like an ocean liner, because in the Victorian era, that's when you really started seeing sort of the rise of the ocean liner. I mean, everybody knows about Titanic, right? But that was in the 1900s. But these ships could make it from England to the US in like 7 days, which is awesome.
yeah.
So, and he had like a really fancy outfitted one. They
Mhm.
had their honeymoon scene on that boat. So,
Very exciting.
I
Oh,
know.
I remember what it was now.
Gosh, I have an obsession with ships. What's up with me?
And now you're here in landlocked Colorado. Like,
I know. Oh, man. I
yeah,
know, but I always love that scene on, the movie Titanic where they're in that carriage and you just see her hand on the window.
yeah.
I was like, I love that scene.
Oh, I remember. Yeah, I remember that watching that as a kid, and then yeah, I'm thinking back about it as an adult, and I'm just like,
Hmm. It makes you all like, you get that little clench in your heart. Yeah.
mhm. Like, ah, Leo.
Yeah.
Okay, so the question that I thought of, this is maybe a weird question, but has anyone that you know of or yourself considered writing like Regency era or Victorian era stories, but not about the aristocracy? Like writing just more about the common folk, I guess.
I mean, it's a good question, right? Because everybody's like, oh my God, just another Duke again. And it's
Yeah.
like, look, it's the same as like the billionaire trope in contemporary romance, right? We want to read about, well, I do, I'm going to speak for myself, read about stuff that people, that's not me. That's not my like, whatever money I make to pay my bills. And then I have no chance to get on a private jet ever,
Yeah.
right? Like, I want to read about the jet. I want the jet. Get me a jet. you know um so I think with dukes and stuff, you kind of like the privilege that those stations bring, but I also like reading about the footmen, the hot footmen. I mean, or like a barrister, or a woman who's a fashion designer, for example. In the series I have with Forever that comes out next February, the woman is a ballerina, and that's part of the demi-monde. And her father was a viscount, but um, he died, and she had to try to find a way to make money. She had no one. So what do you do in that situation, right? You either become kept by someone, or you try to find work somehow. And her talent was dancing. Um, anyway, I love that story too. That's like the rom-com sort of Pretty Woman retelling. And yeah, I just feel like there's stories out there like that, and that is one. But the guy is a duke, so I guess I fail.
You're half there.
no,
Yeah.
no. It sounds delightful. Anything that you can do with Pretty Woman, it's going to be, and with your writing, it's going to be
Oh,
fabulous.
thanks,
We'll all want
Tara.
it. We'll all want it. But I the reason why I write about it, and I don't write about other classes so much. Now I kind of am in this because these women are would be considered middle class, but I think too the biggest thing that I like to deal with are the struggles that the women have. So whether it's a feministic type of lens that I write through, etc. I mean, they have real challenges, and so if you put them in that highest part of society, they have all the tools supposedly available, but yet, as Amelie has said, they're stuck. They can't do anything. So and I think a lot of women today feel stuck, particularly after this last year when they've lost their jobs and they're still taking care of the kids when they're having virtual school. And so, to be able for them to see women that are just as downtrodden as they are, that, come out of it whole and even better. That's what we want. We want that happily ever after on all parts. So yeah,
Yeah,
that's
well
why I
said.
write
Well
what
said.
I write.
Well said.
Yeah, yeah, I like that. All right. Well, I think we're kind of maybe getting close to our 40-minute mark. And those were all my big questions. Oh, Amelie, I did want to ask you. So like the comp stuff that they said about your book was, Master and Commander meets The Princess Bride. If Riston were going to have an "as you wish" sort of like catchphrase, what would these be?
Whatever you want, honey.
That's great.
I love that he's like, he's an alpha hero, but at the same time, I think he respects Sarani so much because she is very resilient. She's strong. She was bred as a princess, so she knows how to handle people. She knows how to handle politics. And she's also like, deeply emotional. So I feel like he's the guy that stands at her side. And if she makes a decision, he supports her without kind of stepping forward to like speak for her. So that's great. I think anything will be like, I love the "as you wish" from Wesley, but yeah, it'll probably be like something like, "Yep, you do it, you do you."
Yeah, yeah. It's like I'm not
Just
gonna.
just don't cut me with your knives. Because
Yeah,
there's a part where they're like, where they're making out, and he's seducing her, and he asks her, he's like, "Do you have your knives on your person? Because I don't want to cut myself." Yeah.
yeah. That's one of those dangers of making out with knives that you.
I'm telling you, man.
Yeah, crazy. Um, and Jenna, I just will say to you, um, I haven't gotten far enough in the book to know like exactly what happened in Catherine's past. Like you're always kind of hinting. It's like, oh, if they find out who she is, I'm just like, what happened? Like what went on? And so I like that kind of mystery element. It keeps me wondering and keeps me wanting to keep reading to figure out what.
Yeah, yeah. It's something. If it happened today, it would be very little,
Mhm.
but back then it was a huge deal. So, yeah, keep reading.
I
It won't
love
be
that.
too
She's
min too
totally
long.
trying to trick you to like give up the story, and you're like, keep reading, bud. We'll get there.
Well, I and I'm sure that this has happened to you. You love it when your readers leave reviews. I mean, it's the highest compliment that you can
Mhm.
give an author. But what's sometimes the reviewers get so excited they share everything, and you're like,
Oh yeah.
but they do, and it's okay. So if you really want to find out, you can go to.
I'm not a big like. Sometimes if I'm reading a really stressful book, I'll read the end because I don't care about spoilers. I'll go read the end and be like, okay, good. Now I can read and be relaxed that
Yeah.
everyone's there.
Yeah.
My sister does that. She reads the very last chapter of the epilogue and
Mhm.
then goes and starts the book. And I'm like, I don't know how you can do that. But
See, so some people like the stress. They like the buildup and the tension and all that stuff. And I like that too, but I like knowing that I'm safe. But that's the best thing about romance, right? And I saw this
uh
discussion online the other day. The beauty of romance for me is that you are safe in this journey of the hero and the heroine. So even if it's crappy in the middle or fraught with whatever, they're going to be together in the end. Because if I didn't have that, I, I don't know. I need that guarantee. I need it
yeah.
as a romance lover. I mean,
hmm
myself.
hmm
That is nice. Yeah, like you said, just, you're safe. It's going to be okay.
Hmm.
And yeah, it takes some of the worry out. So
Well, and I think when a reader picks up your book, I mean, they want that escapism. That's what they're banking on. That's that if you were paying, movie theaters ever come back, you're paying that 15-20 bucks for that ticket. You want to know that you're going to be entertained. And a reader, when they pick up a book, they know that they will be, particularly romance books.
I know you don't want to like run out trying to beat people up because you didn't get what you wanted. I'm not that I've ever done that after a movie, of course.
all right. Well, as a final question, I would just like to ask if there is one aspect of the romance genre that is the most underappreciated thing about it. What do you think that aspect is? And there's no parameters on this, so anything.
I kind of touched on it earlier, but I think there's something for everyone in romance. And I think you can, even if you like a trope that is not popular because of modern sensibilities. And I'm trying to say this very gently because, you know, things change from 20 years ago to now. You can find it. And again, it's a safe space. Whether it's like, you know, I'll say a kidnapping trope or something like that, you know what I mean? Or a mafia trope, you know, which I love. I love that bad boy mafia trope. You read it and it's safe. You know what I mean? It's not to say that I'm going to run out and try to find a mob boss like Tony Soprano to, like, you know, be my boy toy. I'm just saying, it's like in romance, I love that. And I think that's more and more people are discovering that, because romance is, there's a reason it's, you know, $1 billion industry. But yeah, it's, and the thing about it is I hate when, you know, you spoke about it earlier about this, like the literary sort of snobbery. It's like, there is some truly beautiful prose in some romance books I have read, and I have stopped and read these authors' words because they weren't mine. I was seething with jealousy. Such beautiful prose, and you're like, when something like that happens, it's not a literary book. It's a romance book.
Yeah, but
You know,
it can still be beautiful. And like,
absolutely.
whenever someone talks about, you know, just like beautiful prose, I immediately think of Anna Marie Michelmore. Like, all of their books are just like, yeah, they're all, you know, kind
Yeah.
of stories in their own way, but their prose is just
Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
So, Jana, what about you? Most underappreciated thing about romance?
You know, and it's probably one of the things that it's most criticized for too. I mean, I think romance, no matter what it is, it gives the individual hope, gives them hope that their lives will be changed for the better, because they see it on the page, and that could be their life. And I think that's, you know, how many times have we heard, oh, that's so unrealistic, oh, that never happens. Well, yeah, yes, it does. You know, so
I get that in my own life. My husband and I met one night. I mean, and he kissed me that first night, and that was it. He said he knew then that he was going to marry me, and he proposed 6 months later, and we'll be married 21 years this August. Right? I mean, people criticize insta love and stuff like that for whatever it is. It happens. You know, I believe in love. I believe in hope. I think what you said is so true.
yeah. Yeah. And the same thing happened to me with my husband. First time I saw him, I knew that he was the one for me. So, of course, he was my TA in college.
Oh, look at you going a little taboo.
Like, oh, he's gonna change something.
No, I know.
Yeah. I haven't married him yet, but I feel like I maybe have that person in my life too. He's just this goofy, awkward nerd, and I'm like, yep, he's mine.
Love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's great. And yeah, Jana, and just you talking about, you know, how, you know, the hope element is underappreciated and also criticized is, I think it's true, and it is one of those things that just makes me kind of sad inside that people want to criticize for having hope. And, you know, I know that you can kind of maybe be unrealistic about hope sometimes, but just to have a realistic sense of hope, I think is, you know, why wouldn't you want to? Why do you want to live in such a negative world? So, yeah, I like that. That's a good answer. People need to get rid of their negative attitude.
That's right.
Well, yeah, like I said, I think that's all my questions, and I've already taken more of your time than, you know, was originally planned. So, but thank you both so much for being here and starting this, you know, or helping me start this journey of this new program. I was very excited to have you both, and definitely will invite you back anytime. So.
Yeah, thanks for having us. This was amazing.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And I love this girl. So
I love you.
I love here right now. I know. All right. So those who are watching, thank you so much for watching, tuning in and checking out this program and supporting these authors. It means a lot to them and to me, just because I have all that empathy for my fellow author friends. And if you want to learn more about the programs coming up on Speaking Volumes, you can go to thecrowdedbookshelf.weebly.com and see our upcoming events. You can sign up for our newsletter there. You can follow us on Twitter at SpeakVolumesFC. And there's also a Speaking Volumes Facebook page. Do you guys want to do shout outs for your social media so people can follow you?
I'm just on ameliehoward.com and Amelie Howard on Twitter. I'm Amelie Howard everywhere.
Consistency is nice.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm janamcgregor.com, and on my social media, it's the same thing. But I do have a Facebook group, which is Jana McGregor's Ladies and Lords of Langham Hall, and love to have everybody join.
And
So
it's
thank you.
fantastic. Her group is,
Oh,
they're
you're
so
so sweet.
welcoming. There's such wonderful people in there. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, so stay up to date with Speaking Volumes, stay up to date with these authors and see what exciting things they have coming out. Yeah, thank you for watching, and we will see you next time. Thank you, guys.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thank you.